All right, Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal here with Matt Hawkins as always, and we're coming off of a hefty upset combat sports weekend. What's up, Matt? Did you catch Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, I didn't have good internet where I was at, so I was kind of bouncing in and out. But I was able to catch the majority of the fight, and luckily catch the finish. Yeah, definitely a huge upset. I'm seeing people say this is basically the biggest upset in boxing since Buster Douglas.
Yeah.
So that's a
So
whole generation of fight fans who are now experiencing a huge kind of fan favorite, kind of somebody that looked at as almost unbeatable, getting floored in about 30 to 1 odds.
yeah, I mean it was literally. I feel like it wasn't promoted very well to begin with, as far as the lead up. And anybody that did know about it, like I mean, obviously we were aware of it because we're in the space of combat sports. But anybody that did know about it was pretty much thought that Anthony Joshua was a shoe in to win, and then lo and behold, what happened. We had reached out to Daniel Zaldivar, who's been on this podcast, who has his own podcast, The Last Round, which is a boxing podcast, to try to get some insight from him. And he couldn't make it, but he did send us some tidbits of information. So I'm going to read them right now because obviously the topic has been hot all week. According to the promoter Eddie Hearn, he put on Twitter, the rematch is a go. So Daniel thinks that the rematch is intriguing. Betting odds are already out and still have Joshua as a heavy favorite. Wow, I didn't know that. But Danny thinks Ruiz is extremely motivated, especially after winning and being the first Mexican brother to win a heavyweight world title. He says he's willing to jump on in November, December when that rematch is closer to happening. So that's good to know. He also says that there's been a rumor that something was wrong with Joshua before the fight, but he doesn't buy it. He thinks that Ruiz legit caught him with a good shot to the temple when they tried to hook each other. he says you don't hook with a hooker. That's funny. That's from Daniel Zaldivar, The Last Round boxing podcast. I don't know, man. I did bet $1 on Andy Ruiz, so I'm $13 richer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a late replacement fight for Gerald Miller, who tested positive for multiple steroids. So I think we all kind of went into that thinking that this was kind of a fight they just threw together, in order to keep the bout taking place at Madison Square Garden and avoiding canceling and losing out on all the site fees and everything there. So yeah. I think that's kind of what, the casual, I mean, we're essentially casual boxing fans, thought going into that. And that's kind of that's what everybody thought. And then the fight started and we had seen Ruiz the build up to the fight, and he's kind of the Daniel Cormier body of boxing, whereas Joshua's like 6'7" and ripped and came into the fight 21-0 with 21 knockouts. So yeah, I think most people kind of just thought of it as a Butterbean versus the champ situation, and it started off pretty even in the beginning, a little back and forth. Ruiz was doing well with his jab to the body, which I think played quite a bit of a toll when the story was told, but Joshua got the first knockdown and kind of went in for the kill aggressively, which was kind of a not necessarily his style. He usually kind of kicks back and waits for the moment, but he kind of went in for the kill, and during that flurry he got countered and put on his butt twice. I missed the second knockdown. My internet went out for the second knockdown, so I didn't see that, but I know the first one that evened it up, and then he got another one later that round. And yeah, really from that point on, it seemed like it was Ruiz's fight. He got a lot of confidence. He was kind of bouncing around the ring a little bit, like I said, working the jab to the body, and kept kind of setting up his right hook, and started landing it more and more often as the fight went on.
Yeah, the entire third round, DAZN actually put up on social media. So if you haven't seen it, you can watch those earlier knockdowns that you're talking about. The first one from Joshua, and then the following one from Ruiz I mean the last one on that round. I mean, to me, it looked like he got saved by the bell, and but he knocked him through the ropes. It was crazy. Uh, I wrote an article at MMAnews.com that has the video where he comments on his reaction to getting knocked down, because that was the first time he'd ever been put on his back in his whole career. So he's 33-1 now, Ruiz, and he said that Joshua was the first one to ever knock him down. So not only did it motivate him to get back up, which he got back up quickly, but he said he wanted to get him back right away. He was like mad about it, and of course, he started talking the Mexican boxing mentality, and I mean, we're so used to seeing it in the Julio Cesar Chavez and level of boxing, but yeah, it's nice to see in a big man's weight class. It was really nice to see. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Of course, I'm happy there's a Mexican heavyweight champion of the world. Me being Mexican myself, just like Daniel, but it's just crazy. You know what else I think is crazy is the body shaming and the way that people just automatically wrote him off by seeing him at face value. Nobody looked up his record before that, I mean, so he was 32-1 before that. I mean, like, how is that not a legitimate threat to Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, no, what we don't know the boxing records. I mean, yeah. I felt guilty of it. We see a lot of inflated records. So I'm just as guilty as anybody going into this fight. I didn't think Ruiz had much of a chance. Now I watched it because I always am hoping that the underdog pulls it off. And when I see, I hate to say anybody's ducking anybody, but when there's big, huge money fights out there against other with Wilder and Fury, and then essentially you go into this fight seeing, Joshua fighting a guy that most people considered kind of a bum coming in. And obviously that was an overreaction. He was a 2-time Olympian for the Mexican Olympian team.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, he was 33-1 or
yeah. And like 20 of them are knockouts. So
yeah, no, it was it was oversight on obviously everybody's part. And you said it was the first time he got put on his butt, and we always say when somebody gets dropped or somebody loses a fight in MMA, it's kind of how they bounce back is what shows what kind of heart and what kind of champion they're going to be. And he got up off the canvas, and before the final bell rang on that 3-minute round, he had already put down his opponent 2 times. So it obviously shows that he's got something. I didn't see anything that leads me to believe that Joshua would beat him in a rematch. Honestly, I saw Ruiz as the better, crisper boxer. And, if you took away the physical attributes of Joshua, I didn't see anything that led me to believe that Ruiz can't beat him essentially in the same way in a rematch. Even if it goes to decision, I feel like he's more active and I don't, if he's a big underdog, I think that's a fight potentially people could win money on. Now, given the fight will be in the UK this time, and
is that confirmed? I mean, I know Hearn said it at the end, right immediately at the end of the fight, but
it's not confirmed. But if he's got an automatic rematch clause in his contract, and you're Anthony Joshua, you're not going anywhere except the O2 Arena or Wembley Stadium or something like that. You're going back home to get your wits together and try to get a win. And you don't want to have the fight in Vegas if you're Joshua and then lose a questionable decision to a Mexican fighter. We've seen that with Triple G already. So
I wonder what the clause entails though. Like, I wonder if the clause entails like does the champ get to pick, have a say in the venue? I mean, we have to remember that negotiations in boxing are a lot more the fighters get to sit at the bargaining table, whereas in MMA they really don't. So unless they're like somebody that's got like Conor McGregor status or whatever, but you know what I mean. So I think I mean I don't know if it'll matter though. Like you said, I mean if he's champ, he probably wants to stay champ.
Yeah, I mean, usually from my experience with the contracts, and we don't usually see upsets like this. But usually the contracts are heavily weighed towards the champion, especially when coming in this big of a favorite. He's going to have every single backup plan covered in case he's embarrassed, like he essentially was. So I think it was automatic rematch. They probably already had the purses basically determined as far as percentages go. Obviously, the money will go up for Ruiz because he's now the champion, and they'll figure out how much money he wants. But the first thing I thought of was before he won was we got DAZN got with Bellator and we got DAZN with this Joshua contract. Don't we want to see Ruiz versus Tombstone?
I mean, not now.
Not now.
But
yeah, that's just the guy who the fighter who lost to Jack Swagger and
yeah, no, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I just I can't recall his last name. I'm gonna look it up real quick, but yeah, no, I that's instantly what I kind of thought. This was kind of a with the body types and everything. This was as if
he's fighting again in July too. I think he's going. I mean, I don't think it's in Bellator. I think it's at a regional thing. But I just saw he's been putting some training footage up since he's picked up a lot of. He picked up a lot of new followers after fighting Jack Swagger. But
TJ Jones is his
name,
but nicknamed Tombstone. So I mean, this is the fight. This way this worked out was kind of as if Jones would have beaten Swagger that night, given Swagger is not on the same level as Joshua, and obviously Ruiz is a better level than Jones as far as boxing.
But I'm not hating on anybody. I could stand to lose 20 pounds myself, but I'm not trying so hard after Ruiz won. I mean, he's making me second guess my life decisions. So
it's great for him though, and like you said, it's the first Mexican / Mexican American heavyweight champion in the history of boxing. So that's obviously a big accomplishment. For some reason, I thought John Ruiz was, but John Ruiz was Puerto Rican, so that threw me off a little bit going into that fight. But good for him, man. And
Latinos Unidos. So I'm not gonna hate on from one fat Mexican to another. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see, and I think Joshua will be fine in the long run. I don't know if he can ever compete with guys like Wilder or Fury, especially after Wilder's last couple performances. Because Joshua's been shown. I mean, Klitschko put him down a couple times, and obviously Klitschko was no joke. But now that he's been put on his butt, half dozen or so times in his career, you wonder how his chin will hold up against a guy like Wilder or Fury for that matter, a big, heavy, thunderous punch.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing. I mean, I already know that Wilder Fury 2 is already booked for also like the beginning of 2020. I think I read, but I'm already signing off on if Ruiz does it again, I'm signed off on Wilder Ruiz. That would probably be I feel like that'd be a great fight actually. I mean, Ruiz, he's got the no back down attitude, he's fast for his physique and size and everything, versus Wilder, who's a wild puncher himself. I feel like that would be another like highly touted boxing match, kind of the way that Fury and Wilder were talked about last year. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off on that right now.
It's a fun fight.
Yeah.
There's so is the Wilder Fury 2, is that official? I thought I was seeing Wilder versus. Okay, so I'm seeing Wilder versus Luis Ortiz 2 is confirmed.
Is that what it is?
That might be happening prior. And Luis Ortiz is kind of I believe he's Cuban, and he's built kind of similar actually to Ruiz, and he put up a hell of a fight in his first bout against Wilder. I want to say it was on like one of the undercards for Canelo, or an undercard for Mayweather or something like that. But their first match was like fight of the year contender last year. So I'm seeing rematch in Los Angeles on that, breaking 8 days ago. So I think they're gonna fight, and then probably, like you said, if all goes to plan, then they'll do the rematch of Wilder and Fury. So I mean, there's a lot going on in boxing. I think it's outstanding. I say we're casual fans. We're obviously, I've been watching boxing for 30 years, and I know you have too. So it's one of those things where casual might have been a light word, but I enjoy that I'm seeing on social media, and people that were kind of had fallen out of the boxing scene over the last 20 years as MMA kind of took over, really getting back into it. I'm seeing comments from people all over Twitter that, that weren't talking boxing, 3-4 years ago are all of a sudden now with Canelo and Triple G and now the heavyweights throwing down. And I feel like Ruiz is just another chip that can be thrown in there to create, a great fights. And when you have potential now for a Joshua rematch and like I said, Fury and Wilder and, God only knows Klitschko end up coming back or something. I mean, there's a lot of options for some great heavyweight fights that should be able to carry boxing for the next 3 or 4 years if everybody stays healthy and we get to keep it going. So I think it's great for the combat sports world. With that said, getting back to MMA, we got a busy MMA weekend this week. There's Octagon MMA with last week's guest.
Christ.
Last week's guest, Virgil Zwicker, goes in against Attila Vey on Saturday, probably early in the morning in Latvia. Our guest later tonight, Fernando Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, another Mexican.
He travels to
Poland.
Poland. I was going to say Croatia. Poland for ACA in a big matchup. Invicta's on Friday night. But the big card for the weekend is obviously the return of UFC pay-per-view to your favorite UFC Plus pay-per-view, UFC 238, which features 2 title fights and what should be a main event, honestly, in Cowboy versus Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean the card was a little bit thin. It seemed like a few weeks back, but now you look at the card and.
I'm loving it. I'm loving the card.
The top 5 pay-per-view fights.
So here's the bad thing. So here's the bad news on my side. I might not catch as much as I want to see the entire card. I'm lucky if I make the main card because I'll be at the Bacon and Beer Classic in Brooklyn.
Well, bacon and beer, so
I guess I still win.
Yeah, exactly. The fan wins all around on that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm just glancing at the prelims and the the Tatiana Suarez Nina Ansaroff fight is essentially a number 1 or a title contender, elimination fight.
I'm really into Pedro Munoz and Aljamain Sterling.
That's another one. Munoz coming off his big knockout of Cody Garbrandt, and Sterling's been on a huge roll since his loss to Marlon Moraes.
I think the first fight on the card is Joanne Calderwood and Caitlin Chookagian, which I don't even understand because I feel like that's like a contender. Whoever wins that gets a shot at what are they, bantamweight, right?
Flyweight. I think if Caitlin wins, I think she probably locks up the next title fight against the winner of Jessica Ai and Shevchenko. Calderwood, it puts her in probably a true number 1 contender bout, perhaps against I don't know. I'd have to look at the rankings, but it would move her up. She's currently at 5 right now.
They don't matter anymore anyway.
The rankings truly don't matter, and if they wanted to do a fight in Scotland or something, they would give her the main event. But yeah, I mean, loaded fight. Angela Hill's fighting again for like the 4th time in 6 months. I mean, that girl's gone crazy. Fighting. She got a tough matchup against 10-1 fighter, Xian Yan. And Ricardo Lamas, Carolina Kovacevic, Alexo Grasso. Speaking of Mexican fighters, Grasso came out of Invicta as one of the most heralded female prospects. She's kind of had a tough time in the UFC, and they're not making it any easier now with a match with Carolina.
No.
And then, like you said, the Munoz Sterling and then the Suarez Ansaroff. And then the main card kicks off with a heavyweight clash that's Blagoy Ivanov, former World Series of Fighting heavyweight champion, against Tai Tuivasa, who's coming off his first career loss, a knockout loss to Junior Dos Santos. That's a hell of a scrap right there.
Oh yeah. I've seen Blagoy fight a lot, like because of I followed World Series of Fighting deep especially when he was a champion. I was at his fight with Josh Copeland. I believe that's WSOF 31. I mean, I'm off the top of my head, and that fight was a bloodbath. I kind of feel like this is going to go the same way. I don't know. So I'm gonna obviously we're doing our picks. I'm breaking them out here first before they go on MMAnews.com and SureDog.com. So folks, like this is the first time I'm doing universal picks, by the way. Like it's gonna be on the two sites, and I'm probably gonna bet these guys at some level. So so like I said about Blagoy, I it's hard for me to pick against him. I don't think he finishes Tuivasa, especially if it goes all the distance. But I'm just siding with him for his durability.
Yeah, I'm siding with him as well. My brain's telling me a decision, like you're saying.
Mm.
I do in a 5-round fight, I would probably pick Ivanov by late finish. But yeah, a 3-round fight, I see him kind of working his boxing. It's an interesting fight for Tuivasa coming off his first loss. We talked about getting up off the mat after your first career loss in MMA, and for a guy who was going around pretty much stomping fools to get KO'd like he did in his last fight, it'll be interesting. It's never do or die necessarily, especially in the heavyweight division, but you definitely don't want to lose 2 in a row after being 10-0. It's got to be something that's got to be on his mind. So I'll go with Ivanov also by decision, and it's kind of interesting. He's ranked 14th. I think that's a little low for him. He had a close fight with Dos Santos, and then obviously his win over Rothwell was another close fight. But
yeah,
I would have him probably more in like the top 6 or 7 in the world rankings if anybody cared what I thought. That's where
I care, Matt. That's why we do
this. Then you got Jimmy Rivera, Peter Yan. Rivera coming off of a lackluster fight against Sterling, which is kind of funny that he gets the main card bout while Sterling's on the undercard, and perhaps in the world of ESPN carrying the prelims, that's not the worst thing as opposed to getting lost on the plus pay-per-view thing. But you get Jimmy Rivera against Peter Yan. Yan 12-1 has really been a firestorm since coming into the UFC. 4-0 in the UFC, including a win over John Dodson in his last bout. I want Yan to win this fight. You know, I enjoy the Russian fighters. I like this style. He does a lot of spinning shit and likes to knock people out violently. But for some reason, I just keep seeing Jimmy Rivera wrestling him down and laying on him for 3 rounds. So I don't want it to go that way, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say Rivera wins a lackluster decision to get back on the winning track at UFC 238.
Wow, that's interesting that you're going that way. I'm actually going with Peter Yan, just because I feel like Rivera is starting to lose his steam. I mean, I know he's not old or anything like that. I mean, he's super well rounded. He's a Tiger Schulman's MMA product, and they're all pretty much like well-rounded MMA guys that they pump out of Tiger Schulman's. Favorite here in Jersey, you know, he's a popular fighter from this side on the East Coast. Yeah, so I might get a little hate over it, but I'm actually picking Peter Yan to win. I just think his striking might be better than his. I think he might outpoint him.
Well, striking's definitely better than Rivera. I just feel Rivera might go to the safety route, and Jan's weakness, I would say, if he has one, is his wrestling. So that's just a thought. Like I said, I'll be pulling for Jan, but I just feel like this could be the unexpected slow fight of the night. That brings us into the firework fight. Tony Ferguson, Donald Cowboy Cerrone added late last month. Or early last month, I should say, I guess. My God. I wish it was a 5-round fight.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
I've picked against Ferguson a few times, and I've been wrong. But in those fights, he's been caught, and he's been hit hard, and he's had to fight through adversity to pull it out against fighters like Anthony Pettis. Whew. I've also picked against Cerrone and been wrong on multiple times, including, I believe, even his last fight against Raging Al.
Yeah.
I picked Al to beat him.
I think I did too, yeah.
And that was obviously foolish. I'm gonna stick with not picking against Cerrone this time. I feel like his activity, the fact that he's been fighting a lot lately, and whereas Ferguson's only had a few fights in the last few years due to injury, I'm going to take Donald Cerrone by. I'm going to take him by decision uh, because it's not a 5-round fight, and I think both of the guys are durable enough to avoid getting finished. But I think Cerrone might be the more active fighter, and I'll take him by decision in a great fight of the night kind of fight.
Yeah, I mean, so that's another one we're going to be on the same page for. So, just I have to put it out there. It'll be in my MMA news predictions piece. This was out of all the fights on the main card that I had to do picks for. This was by far the hardest one to make a decision on, just for the mere fact of how good these guys are. The only thing that made me side with Cerrone is his since it's like he's on a mission since he returned to 155. You know, and I just think he's got a tunnel vision towards the title since he's been there. So I think he's just clear and focused on what he wants to do. And with all the stuff that's Ferguson's been through in the news, not recently, it's hard to not consider that and make him the decision for my pick. So I wonder how focused he is. Again, as martial arts is supposed to be a stress reliever for a lot of folks. It's a good distraction, helps you keep your mind present. So it could be nothing. If anything, with the issues Ferguson have had in the past, it's only going to help him the fight camp and being prepared for something. So I could be wrong in it, but I don't know. I just felt more confident picking Cerrone over Ferguson. So I'm with you on that one.
That brings us to the co-main event of the night, the female flyweight world championship bout between Valentina Shevchenko, the defending champion, against former Bellator champion Jessica Eye. I 3-0 since they've created the flyweight division. She went on a huge, I think, 4 or 5 fight losing streak prior to that. When she was fighting at bantamweight, she's found her weight class. I'm gonna go with a huge upset here, and I'm gonna say Jessica Eye has the fight of her career, and comes out. And I don't know how, but I'm gonna say somehow she pulls out a victory in this fight. I don't know why. I just feel like she's found her weight class. Now, she's won 3 fights by decision, 2 of them split, so she hasn't been exactly a world beater necessarily, but she has beat some good competition in Caitlin Kudigan and Jessica Rose Clark. I don't know. I feel there's something I'm just feeling that she's going to come out here, not be afraid of the bright lights, and have a career defining performance for her. And we'll see if that happens. I might look like a fool come Saturday night, but yeah, I'm going to go with the big upset here and say Jessica Eye wins the championship.
All right, yeah. I mean, we're 2 for 2 as far as picks because I'm actually picking Shevchenko on this one. I'm noting the ones that you picked opposite of me, by the way, so I could break your balls via text on Saturday night while I'm at the Bacon and Beer Classic. But Valentina Shevchenko, I just have her. I think she can pull off a decision win. I mean, I'm not writing off Jessica Eye. I know she's tough, and I agree with you. I think her return to flyweight makes her. She's obviously been on a win streak, but like you said, they're decision wins, and I just think the laundry list of opponents that they both have, Shevchenko just has fought better people, so that's why I went with Shevchenko.
Yeah, I think it'll either be a whitewashing and Shevchenko just cleans her clock, or like I said, Jessica shows up and puts on a career defining performance, and I'm leaning towards the performance one, but I definitely, understand where the odds makers are and where your pick falls on that one. That brings us to the main event of the evening for the vacant TJ Dillashaw disgraced bantamweight title of the world. TJ stripped after Well, after losing to Cejudo at 125, tested positive for multiple drugs and steroids and was stripped of his title. As a result, Cejudo, the flyweight world champion, is coming up to try to get the belt in the division where he just beat the champion, and he faces Marlon Moraes, former World Series of Fighting champion. And all-around badass. I'm going with Moraes, TKO/KO within the first, say, 7.5 minutes of the fight.
Yeah, man. I only root for fat Mexicans, so I don't root for little ones. So yeah, I mean, Marlon, he's a Jersey guy. He's even when he beat the only guy he lost to in the UFC already. That was his last fight against a Sun South. So I'm with you there, and that's actually the prediction you made. The method rather. If you're gonna, he's the favorite. So if you're gonna bet, do a bet for Moraes by KO TKO because that's the one that's gonna pay.
Yeah, I think if it goes to decision, I think that leans towards Cejudo because that might mean that Cejudo's using his wrestling and kind of stretching the fight along. As long as the fight's standing, I know Cejudo's shown good hands in his last, half dozen fights or so. But I think Moraes is a different world when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I also think Cejudo's, although his head is huge in real life, I feel like his head is just kind of swelling as far as, I get you want to be confident, and he has every right to be cocky and confident. But I feel like
did he go crazy or something? I feel like he wasn't like that,
Oh, he wasn't, and he's just. I think he's got letting it get to his head as far as, it's kind of a trollish version.
Yeah, I liked him better when he was like Mr. Olympia,
Yeah, and I think most of the world does. So, I think that a loss here would be interesting to see if he kind of goes back to the humble Cejudo that we kind of got with. And it also makes me wonder what happens to the 125-pound division. There's only like 9 fighters left in that division, so it seems like no matter what, the men's flyweight division will be essentially folded, and we may never see him actually defend that title that he won from. He defended against Dillashaw, but see him defend it again.
Yeah, man. I mean, UFC's been slowly chipping away at that division anyway. I mean, we spoke with Natan Levy, who's fighting on Friday. The main event of that is Brandon Moreno, who was like one of the guys that we thought would have been, contender for that title. So, I mean, I don't think the flyweight division will see the end of 2019, but that's a whole nother podcast episode for itself.
Yeah, you bring up Levy. So we have 3 podcast alumni fighting this weekend. Levy Friday night, LFA 69. I believe he's in the opening main card bout. And then, as we mentioned earlier, Virgil Zwicker fights at Octagon MMA in Latvia. And we have an interview for Fernando Gonzalez joins the show again. Good friend of the show, has been on a few times now. As he's probably on a plane right now or just getting in to Poland for his bout at ACA. Our full interview with him coming up right after we're done talking here. But Fernando's got a lot to say about his preparation.
It's ACA or ACB? It's ACA, right?
ACA now, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's happy about traveling the world now, getting a chance to see some stuff, and Ed asked him what he likes to do when he's not preparing for a fight. So until next time, fans can follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter, myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, at Carbeerzol on Instagram. I'm sure you'll see a lot of beer and bacon photos and selfies from Ed this weekend. And then stay tuned right now for Fernando Gonzalez, the Menifee Maniac.
Cool.